Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, first order of business is to elect our board president. Do I have a motion to nominate?
I'll make the motion. Do I have to say it out loud? I nominate Perry.
Yeah.
As much as it pains
Could you
me.
just-
no.
Little more
Just kidding.
enthusiasm.
I will second.
Thank you.
I'll third.
Mhm.
I'll get on the train.
Do we have any other motions? Okay, can we go around the room, Howard?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Can you pass this to Barry?
Aye.
Oh,
There we go. Oh, have to read this?
no, you can sign
Sign
it. The back. Yeah.
English.
And then I hand the meeting over to you, Barry.
All right, next is election of the vice president. Have nominations.
I'll nominate, Mr. Christopher Rosenberger.
Second,
I'll second.
Get a second.
Howard.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. All right. Now we have to move.
If you could take the oath.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay.
All right, now we're. All right, so we're gonna go straight into the workshop. Given that, you've got everybody here. So why don't we, where is that on the
It's
agenda?
D.
All right, you wanna start, Calvin?
So thank you to everyone who came with us to work with us today. I think at our last workshop, we introduced a lot of scope design ideas and concepts to the board. And for many of our board members, this is a lot of new information to take in. So we spent a couple of weeks kind of digesting it a little bit. In the time since, we've met as a project team, and there've been some adjustments made to our designs. So what I'd like to do today, I'm gonna ask Brian Manning to the BBS from BBS here today, and then Brian will introduce the team and explain who's here and why. I'm going to ask Brian to then speak to the evolution of our scope proposals. I think what came out of our last meeting was a lot of, well, why would we do it that way? Why would we design it that way? Why does it look like that? And so what wasn't transparent in that meeting was that there was a lot of evolving concepts that got us to that point, things that we considered, things that we couldn't consider because reasons. So I think it's important that Brian and his team share how we've landed on some of these, design options, whether it's the infrastructure, certainly the flow of people through this building and ADA compliance is something that I'd like to spend a little time on. And then just general updates on scope priorities and preferences from the board's perspective. I think there'll be a lot of value in having that discussion with the remaining time of our workshop. I will say a couple of things before we get really deep into it. There's been a lot of concern about our dollar figures, certainly. And then part of the reason why we waited as long as we did to even bring this as a draft to the board is that the dollar figures are constantly evolving. We are in what's called the pre-referendum design phase. Typically, and I know our architects and engineers will speak more specifically to this, but in a very general sense, roughly 5% of the design work happens pre-referendum. These gentlemen and their teams don't spend a whole large amount of time and energy doing blueprints, drawings, and really drilling down measurements and things like that until after the vote passes. So we are investing our time and energy wisely. So I think sometimes the questions we have are a little bit more granular than we're prepared to address. And I just want to be fully transparent that that's not an indication of being unprepared. It's just an indication of that's not where we are yet in the process. So you may hear statements like that's more of a schematic design question where we'll get to that level of detail after the vote. So I think what's really important to focus on is what projects or what sub-projects within these general proposals are really critical for that primary consideration as Proposition 1, secondary consideration as Prop 2, and tertiary consideration as Prop 3. And I just want to be fully transparent with the board that the dollar amounts have changed a little bit in terms of the updated figures from the Palumbo Group, and they're going to continue to evolve as we get deeper into the design process. So with that, let's turn it over to Brian, introduce our players.
Just like one comment. To me, one of the most important things for the board to focus on are the characteristics. We don't want to buy a bunch of, I don't know, window fans. And then in 5 years, we're back in front of the taxpayers saying, hey, we need to upgrade the HVAC. We don't want to, we want to make it clear that what we're doing is an investment for the future. And that's, to me, that's where we need to, at least that's where I want to focus is what are we doing something that's solving a problem? Are we doing something that to solve a problem that needs to be solved? Or is it a problem that, it's been okay and we're okay? So anyway, I rather than focus on, what type are we using, Phillips or straight blade screwdrivers, it's more of what are we trying to accomplish?
Great point, Barry. Thank you for that. And I'll say as a further point of clarification, like one of the most obvious number jumps is like, well, our building condition survey was 40 million and now we're talking about over 60 million. And so like, that's a really good basic example of like, when we look at a building condition survey, it's like, we've got old stuff, don't really work too good. How do we fix that, update that? And it's like really just the estimation is like an in-kind replacement. I take out that thing and put in a new version of that thing. When we're looking at system designs, whether it's the roofing system, the HVAC system, the roadway system, whatever it is, when we're looking at improvements, that takes us to a different place of design and cost estimation, stuff like that. So it does evolve as we go. So I appreciate that clarification, Barry.
Yeah, but that being said, we want to make sure that the taxpayer of the district is that it's done properly the first time, one and done. So we don't have problems like, but when the high school was built, it obviously created the problem we have with the traffic flow. And I don't know what was here before then, but this is where the traffic flow has needed to be looked at. But that applies to everything. If we're going to fix it, let's fix it right, and let's make sure it's designed properly. And I'll leave it at that.
That's a great point. I would rather postpone an entire project than do it halfway, and then have to ask the taxpayers for more money for the same thing, where they're going to say, how many times are we going to pay for this thing, right? I agree. Right?
Okay, glad to be back at Marlboro.
Wow. Sorry, Nick.
My second announcement, now that I realize I'm in both. It's been announced in committee, but I'm retiring. Effective pretty soon, and I was gonna have a full retirement. And now it's really not worked out that way. I'm gonna stay as a consultant to the firm. I'm gonna work on certain projects. I'll be behind the scenes and in public, working on things that I am passionate about, this district being one of them. But I will be taking a secondary role. I will not be running the opening office, et cetera. So I have a good team with me here today. I want to introduce.
Well, can we just make sure if there's anything to do with putting signs on the buildings, not to be involved?
Thank you very much. Okay. I think you guys know Fred. Some of you know Fred anyway, because about a year and a half ago, Fred did the mechanical plumbing electrical portion of the building condition survey. And he is our lead mechanical engineer for the firm and a partner at the firm. So he's getting involved in the job more frequently now. To my immediate right is Joe Reddick. Joe's a partner at the firm and the director of architecture for the entire firm. And he is now taking my position as the lead architect for this district. Again, I'll still be involved behind the scenes, but I might be in a different district and not even realize it. You might not see me. To my left is Kurt Coronado. He's a licensed landscape architect. And a lot of this project revolves around site and traffic. And Kurt is a key part of the team in studying that and coming up with schemes for that. So, Elliot asked me to talk about the history behind some of the design work and the things we looked at that worked and didn't work. The biggest one is the middle school. This building, the handicapped accessibility issue that we have. So we looked at it in all different ways. First of all, to move back, the staff and the committee thought it was really not working the way it is. The amount of time, the amount of how visual it is to the district, how dangerous it is to have these things, that something needed to be done. So we looked at what we could do. And we first did look at ramps. Ramps are usually less expensive than elevators. So we looked at how we could do that. We have 3 levels, each one is 10 feet apart. You get from one level to another 10 feet, you have to have 100 feet of ramp, plus 120 feet of ramp, plus landing. So now you're at 150 or 160 feet of ramp. That's just to get from that wing to this wing. And so we laid those out and see how they would work. They were wieldy. They were it would be a very long walk to go all the way from the top to the bottom on 350-foot ramps. And also the amount of square footage they would take up, because they have to be inside the building. So we'd have to build additions for them. It would actually cost quite a bit more than the scheme with the elevators. So we latched onto the scheme with the elevators as the premium way to solve this in a long-term fashion, something that'll last 50 years. And there's certain pressure on the budget that made us look at other things. And one of the things we looked at recently is putting lifts instead of elevators, but keeping the scheme pretty much the same as it is. So we talk about that. That would save a little bit of money, but it's not the premium solution that maybe you're looking for here, judging from your comments today. That's the main challenge in this building. The other things we're doing in this building are moving the program to where it should be and renovating spaces to the sizes they should be. And the fax room is the key point to that, I'd say, to look at in the large group instruction room. These are things we're right sizing so that the building is more functional. When we look at the elementary school, both elementary schools had a traffic problem that generated a design for the building. So in Elm, the traffic was backed up around the streets. People were complaining about that. The committee brought it up as a big issue. So how do we solve that? We come up with the road and the drop off. And when we started looking at that, it drove us to say that office is not in the right place. It's not in the right place for security or for any other reason. Let's move the office. And when we started looking at shifting things around, we came up with bringing the bus traffic into the same spot, changing that elevation issue that you have here, which is an ADA issue. So there's a holistic design there that came in stages, but we feel really addresses the building for the next 50 years. And safety and security and traffic are the drivers of the whole. I'm just talking about program stuff now. There's also new mechanicals and new windows and things going on all over the place. Alden had a traffic problem as well. It was a different kind of problem, but we tried to solve that by changing where the parents drop off and where the buses drop off. There was also a big complaint in that building that they don't have a cafeteria separate from the gym. That's a real problem for scheduling. It's a problem for the maintenance staff setting up, taking it down and cleaning it in time for the gym classes, et cetera. You're blessed over there, I guess I call it that. with extra space, extra classrooms. So we were able to propose to take 3 classrooms and make a cafeteria out of it. And also put it in a part of the building where the drop off from buses and parents would make more sense. And also move that office to the front of the building so that that main office also does not have a good location in terms of safety and security. So the design of that building was based on cafeteria, safety, security, and traffic. And that's how we progressed with that. The high school was a late entrant to the conversation because we said it's new, it doesn't need anything, it's great. And we just had that opinion, but the opinion started to come out in committee that, well, maybe it's not that great, maybe we could do some improvements. And the greatest one that someone at the table thought of is taking that unused space underneath the science wing and in front of the library and closing that and making a really dynamic library space out of it. So that's the key design element, I think, in the high school that will really add a lot of interest for the students and programs for the students that they don't have now, space for them to be. If you go there during the day, you won't see many kids in that space. I guarantee you when this change comes, that's where they're going to be. And then we're still looking at, we need to do something with the science labs because they don't work. But we're looking at where they actually should be and how we should lay it out. So right now we have money towards it, but we're still looking at, should they be in that one pod? Should they be in the wing? Which one's less expensive? Which one's more expensive? So we're still looking at that too. So I think that's, anything to add, Elliot?
No, I think that's a good kind of synopsis. I'll ask a couple of kind of clarifying questions. Yeah, the feedback we've gotten so far, and if anybody wants to jump in, please feel free. You mentioned Elman Alden that the traffic design informed the program design. If that's fair to say.
Yes.
Would you still recommend the program design adjustments if we were to forego the traffic? So like, does it make sense to move the Elm Drive office, main office and principal's offices and do the ADA work if we don't bring in that extra roadway and we kept parent drop off at what would be that new main entrance and bus drop off in the alley, whether it's at where it comes in now, we're backing it up to match the interior design. So I'll ask that question. And then the same question for Alden is, if we didn't do the external site work, does it still make sense on any level to do that interior redesign from your professional opinions?
It's a very good question. I think in both cases, you could argue that you really should do all the interior work that we're proposing because it still will be more safe and secure. In what we're proposing, you gain the cafeteria. If the parents keep dropping off in front and the buses in the back, you still want a cafeteria. That doesn't change that fact. So, and that's a good place to put it because it's right near the playground. And it can be used when kids are entering or exiting to gather kids if you want to work it that way. So, and moving the offices is something that I think you really need to do to have secure entrances. So I would do, if we don't do the site work, I don't think the building work would change, even though it was generated by it.
Is there any, or I guess, I don't know how to phrase this, where we are right now with the middle school work, is there any solution other than an in-kind replacement where we don't have to expand our footprint? In other words, finding a hole for the lifts in the footprint we have, or does every design option really require an expanded footprint?
So for the spine, to make that ADA compliant, we do require a bump out at 2 bump outs to be able to put either the elevator or the lift. Because we can't put it inside of the existing spine because it's not wide enough.
So like when we looked at with the auditorium, and Joe's probably gonna speak more to this in a little bit, but with the revised drawings that we'll show, but in general, we talked about putting a lift within the auditorium space, eating up a couple of chairs, but we don't have to go outside.
Right.
Is there any variation of this design where we could do something like that within the spine for the first, second, and third floors respectively?
We did look at trying to incorporate it into the wings, but it doesn't work because of the way the stairs coming in and out. The stair starts right at the edge of the building and from the top going down. And it doesn't give you any landing there to do something like that. Plus, there are important spaces in there, like the bathrooms. And if we displace bathrooms to put in an elevator or a lift to save square footage, we're gonna spend a lot of money replacing those bathrooms. So to make a little bump out that has either an elevator or a lift in it, yeah, the elevator is expensive, the lift is not as expensive, but the little bump out is not astronomically expensive.
And when we say lift, we're talking about a little bit, but those things that we have already.
No, so it would go up and down versus traveling the way. So it would be a bump out
A straight vertical,
and up.
basically a platform, an open platform versus an
Right.
enclosed cab.
But I guess my point is, if it's a lift, then whoever's using it is basically like people are, can be standing there watching.
Right, they would be visible, I would assume, more likely than not.
Can I go over some details of those two? Okay, great. Right, a lift is a single occupant. Okay, it's a platform, it's a single wheelchair. And that person needs to have access or be accompanied by somebody with access to use the platform. You wouldn't, generally wouldn't just give a middle school child free access to it. If you have two of them, right, to get from one level down to the final third level or up to the first level. And they're slow. Okay, they're about 20 feet per minute. An elevator is 5 times faster. An elevator goes 100 feet per minute. Okay. Well, you're not going that far. It's 10 feet. So does that really matter, right? I don't know. Maybe that doesn't really matter too much, right? That time. But an elevator is fast also because you push a button and the door opens. Lift, you have to unlock the gate door, get onto the platform, operate it, then open the lower gate door, get out, close it, and then it's secure. So you have to do that twice, in addition to the slow speed travel, in addition to the chaperone that you'll need to do that. So operationally, those would be the differences between a lift and an elevator. There are other differences. As Brian said, a lift is smaller, requires less of a footprint, therefore less of a building addition, and therefore less money in that also. But I don't think we're quite there yet with those dollars for the difference. But chairlift, I kind of described that it's less user-friendly already, but it also has a lower probable useful life. Generally, you know, we put these things in schools and they start to fail after 10 years. And then the company goes out of business after 15 years, and then you can't find parts, and then you have to replace the whole lift in 15 years. Elevators are not like that. Elevators are serviced every year, they're updated, you can get them repaired with non-proprietary parts as they age in their lifetime. You know, there are perfectly serviceable elevators that are 50 years old. So an elevator is a more permanent, easier, long-term solution, faster.
So what are we talking about? If we use that, my total investment in the elevator versus a lift, assuming that, you know, I'm gonna have to replace the thing in 15 years. What's the difference in cost? I mean, a round number, is it 10 million each that, you know,
It's
I'd say.
nothing like that, no. Lou, I'll say something, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. So the guts, so the lift itself, I'm not talking about the building addition we create for it, but the lift itself, you'll probably get the parts, the lift for $100,000, okay? And somebody's got to install it. So I'm just gonna say that's $250,000. For an elevator, you get the parts for like $350,000, then you need to install it, right? So an elevator might be closer to probably $600,000 installed. And again, that's not counting the building around it. So it's hard to throw out numbers for the building that houses it, because it's like, it's like economy of scale, okay? Once you set up somewhere to work, there's a lot of cost in that. And then if you gotta make it 3 feet bigger in each direction, well, that scale of cost is much less.
Yeah.
So I think until real numbers get put on it, it's hard to say. Can you add anything to that, Lou?
No, I think you got it. I think what's tough about these additions as well is when you look at the logistics to build between, that's the hardest part of building these elevators.
Well, the reason that,
Getting into the courtyard and building.
on the estimates that we had, I mean, downstairs, as far as the auditorium, it was quoted at about 341. So, obviously two would be 682 and whatever three would be. For elevators, it was quoted at 4.6 million. So, which is a lot higher than what you're saying. So, and I know that some of that 4.6 million is obviously the build out. I wouldn't say it's all of it. I mean, it would probably be a higher percentage of the actual machine and everything else. I don't know. I guess that's the question I had. So of that 4.6 million, how much would be construction versus elevator?
Well, right, that is demolition of the current links,
Right.
rebuilding of the current links, larger, rebuilding the stairs inside, all of that concrete, all of those floor finishes, all of the windows, the building envelope, the roof,
Right.
and then the elevator or the lift within it. So it's very hard to parse those out just from that.
Well, I would only ask to parse out the construction and then the elevator cost. So then we can say, okay, well, the elevator is this and the lift is this. Because right now it looks like it's a much bigger difference because one's clumped and one's not. So if you come back and say, the lift is 341, the elevator would be 786. That's a little bit more palatable than saying 4.2 versus 347.
Either way, you're in for 3 million in general.
Well, that's what we need to know.
That's what the public needs to do, it needs to understand. What is the actual difference between the two? And then what are the positive and negative aspects? To me, that's still a lot of times, to me, if I'm a disabled person getting in that thing and then having people watch me go up the thing, I'd rather get in an elevator where it's private and not be exposed. But that's even with the rest of it, I think we need to know, like, very much apples to apples.
And then looking at the life cycle, you'll have to replace that lift 2 or 3 times in the life of the
The
elevator.
lifts, the other big thing with lifts, talking with so many facility directors that we put them in. There's an interlocking mechanism, so you roll in and it's all safeties, right? So when you go in, that thing will not move up unless all of the interlocks are working. One of the interlocks is that you're actually rolling over an interlock. The door's an interlock. The chair being in a certain place is an interlock. And what happens is if everything isn't just right, that person just sits there. And what happens is a lot of these lifts, sometimes they don't get used. Those interlocking mechanisms they fail. And we were replacing, they look brand new. And we're replacing them because of the interlocking mechanism. And it's a simple switch. But like Joe said, now you go to the company's out of business. Now you gotta try to find a dummy switch or something that you can sort of, cob for the time being, and you're hoping that it'll work. But when you think about it, there's probably 3 or 4 interlocking mechanisms before that thing will work. And
Can I ask a question also? I'm just thinking in terms of like who would be using it, so it's not just like a person in a wheelchair, it would be like a person with a walker or just a broken leg or something, so is it a little more cumbersome, you're talking about locking into all these things, what if it's just me and I got 2 broken legs or something? It's just different for each, you know what I mean, like it's,
Like if you're on crutches.
right, you still have to sit in this thing, or like, what if you're,
not sitting in it.
okay, it's just lifting up, okay.
Yeah, so if you're on crutches, you have to open the gate, brush yourself in, shut the gate, and then operate the device without help, because it's only to one person, right? So with an elevator,
Okay.
we usually send like a kid with another kid, like here, I'll carry Amy's backpack, if she's on
Right,
crutches,
right.
get her to class.
But I think forgive me if I'm wrong, I think you just said that the interlocks are on the lift are fairly complicated. if I'm just going in with a set of crutches, do I have to push one over here and push one over there to get it to move, or?
But that person's gotta be able to shut that door tight, they gotta lock it tight. And when you're on a wheelchair, those things are balanced, right? Just based on use. After a certain amount of wheelchairs or uses, you could stand in one spot and it won't work. Then you move to the, just all you have to do is move to the left and it'll work. But you figure that out after you.
Excuse me, my understanding too is, so the difference between an elevator and a lift is an elevator, you go in, there's an elevator door that automatically closes and takes you to your position. In a lift, there is no automatic door that closes and protects you from that outside barrier. There is a door that you have to manually close and, I guess in this situation, lock. With the elevator for safety purposes, if it's moving, I'm sorry, the lift, if it's moving, would you be able to push the door, or would you be able to use it without locking it? So for example, if I'm a student that has a broken leg and I forget to lock the door in the lift because it's not like an elevator, it's automatically going to have that barrier for me. Can I move in the lift without that door being locked that I have to manually put behind me? Can I push it out if it's midway? Are there any safety perspectives or concerns on that end?
That's a great question. That's part of the reason why a lot of these just get, they get put to the side. Student gets stuck. Now they gotta figure out, okay, how come it's not moving? And again, it's a lot of the switching. It's all safety. That's what it's there for. It's not a bad thing, but it becomes burdensome, right? All the safety that's required to just get into this device, it's gotta be locked before it starts moving. And like Joe said as well, normally, and it depends on your policy, normally, school districts, if somebody's in that list, somebody has to be on the other side waiting for them. So it's not just of a wheelchair person just getting into an elevator and doing their own thing. They can get into the elevator, they can press the button, it goes. This is different, that you have to have a partner that's working with you.
Yeah, you can have elderly staff that just want to use the elevator, right? Custodians who are wheeling things around just want to use the elevator. It's very convenient. We would really not recommend chair lifts. They are the minimal way to meet the ADA requirements in this situation. An elevator is much more useful, functional, durable. That would be what we would recommend you to do.
But going back to Chris's point, we need to be able to say, you know, hey, because the way it looks now, if you spend 300 grand, you get a solution that works. Or you can spend $4 million. That's if I was looking at that without knowing anything else, I'd say the board has lost, you know, they're just losing touch because they're spending an extra $3.5 million just so that it, you know.
Or you do absolutely nothing because it's compliant right now. Is it optimal? No. But what we have currently, it's, you know, if you don't touch it, it meets the specs that currently exist at the time it was constructed.
The only concern with that, Howard, is that these units are aging out. And I can't say with any certainty how much longer they will function at a basic
I
level.
agree, something should be done, but whether we should, you know, an elevator can be used for a lot of different reasons, to move books around, and I mean, there's all kinds of reasons other than ADA compliance. But cost, it needs to be weeded through to show apple to apple and to show the public this is why. Because otherwise, somebody could say, you've been living with it for X amount of years, leave it alone.
So to that point, and I'll ask you guys, is it fair to say that if we touch it, the whole thing has to come to code? The stairwells themselves? Okay, so there is, I think, something from the board, there's a baseline construction cost to just bring our stairwells to code, irrespective of lift versus elevator.
I think you can make the point they need to be though.
I agree,
They're
but
made.
I think,
There's-
I think what I'm hearing from Chris, from you, Perry, and Howard is, let's establish what that baseline construction
Yeah.
scope and dollar amount is, just for the stairs to be as wide as they need to be, the right tread height, the right depth, the right distance.
Well, I'm assuming that would be the 4.7 with the elevators.
with the elevator.
Right, that's everything included stairs.
And it would be
construction.
somewhat reduced to go to.
No, and I think it's important to point out, when we started this conversation, we had an option of 6.2.
That was with the
So
bigger
we
spine.
have come down and we've, made, different adjustments to it. I really just wanted to kind of make sure we've exhausted all our options, because it's a big sticker price. For something we may need, but last year was used 0 times. So, I'm not trying to be, cheap or not take people into consideration. I'm just saying we just have to vet it out.
I just think, the scale of cost difference between the two, or 5.7 with elevators. The scale is measured in hundreds of thousands, not millions.
Yeah, that's
Just
important.
so everybody knows tonight that it won't be 2.5 million.
And rather than just keep saying the same thing, which I pretty much do, is that's not apparent in the way the budget's broken down now. It looks like it's a lot more money, in the millions.
Just an extra line item, construction, stairs and elevator.
As we're updating this list, can we do basic construction with lifts and then additional costs for elevator upgrade?
But I also think that you, like, to all these guys' point, they've all mentioned it, the lifts need to be replaced a lot sooner, so maybe life expectancy.
Yeah.
Of replacement
So
too,
that can be a parenthetical entry.
That, I think that would be really.
Is that something we can work out?
Yeah, and I think when you look at the approach of the lift in the auditorium, it's very different than, yes.
There's no
What we're trying to do is it's a totally, I wouldn't compare the two, because I think it's a totally different bill. I mean, the auditorium project, doing that is a lot simpler.
Well, I think most of the people that are gonna be using the auditorium lift are gonna be elderly parents and grandparents. I'm not sure the lift is the right idea there either,
Great.
I mean, that's. I'm trying to take the opposite.
Unless there's something, I think we've beaten the elevators to death. When I keep going with
Yeah,
the
for sure. So
bigger,
on that note, as we update our documents, let's just do that. Let's do stairwell construction with lifts, and then life expectancy in parentheses, and then additional costs for elevator with life expectancy in parentheses, and then have the additional. We can look at scaling.
For both areas.
Yeah. Joe, before we jump completely out of the lift conversation, do you want to highlight the discoveries you made about our auditorium here?
I do, can we get the?
I can put that right now. I think it's at the very end, correct?
It might be 3 sides back in the end, maybe 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I got it right here. We're going to just make it full screen. Oh, hold on, yeah, give me 1 second. I gotta screen share for the folks at home. Sure.
Okay, so just to orient everybody, we have upper, middle, lower, we have our 2 links that we talked about. Down here is the fax room, tech room, and we have the auditorium here at the bottom. Okay, last meeting, which I was remote for, we had a discussion about egress for the auditorium. I blew up the auditorium here, so it's actually that. I blew it up here, and we put the seating in. We came and measured the whole auditorium out to check this out to be sure. You do lack egress in the auditorium. We do need to put a pair of doors out to the front, which are going to be below grade. So I don't know how far below grade it is at the moment. It might be 3 feet, might be 3.5 feet, something in that range. It's not 8 feet. So it's going to be a sunken stairway that comes up to grade. So that's going to be the egress out of the auditorium. Also, we.
Is that the front or the back that you're pointing out?
This is the front. So
That's
the
okay,
stage here.
okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So the exit that's there is not, you're talking about that. The exit that's right now.
It's there at the top of the stage, right?
Yeah.
It's at the top of the stage.
Okay, gotcha.
The thing is, you can't have the spectators go up the stage steps and exit through the stage. That's the problem you have.
Okay, gotcha.
They need a direct exit from the lower section of the auditorium. So that's why we have to put that.
Okay.
Now,
That's
also,
gonna have stairs.
It will. It'll have something like 6 steps.
Right, so that's
not accessible.
Should that be a ramp?
It does not need to be.
Oh.
Not all exits in the building need to be handicap accessible emergency exits. They don't all need to be. If you wanted to, that's an option.
Mhm.
You could do that. We could put a ramp. It would be much more expensive and, take a much more.
So you can't have stairs to go out, but you can have stairs to go, or can't have stairs to get up to the exit, but you can have stairs to get out of the exit.
Stairs up to.
So you're saying it's that you'd have to build 6 steps
Yes,
on the outside?
on the outside.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one of my questions is you can't have to go up 6 stairs on the inside. But you can
Well,
go
I-
down 6 steps on the
I
outside.
could, we could
Just
do
seems-
that, but I'll end up eating into your seating here. I'd have to build a platform extension off the stage. It's.
I think what's,
It's a mess.
why is the current exit not okay? Why, I mean, they have to go up those stairs to get
You're
to
not
that.
allowed to get onto this, you're not allowed to send. And so theoretically, in an emergency, half the people are supposed to calculate to go forward and half back. They have no way to go forward because they're not supposed to go across the stage. They're not supposed to egress across the stage.
But if we put, like in the high school, the handicap spots are in the front of the auditorium.
Mhm.
And there's, the only way to go is either back up the ramp like you would here, or
They can go the side
go up the
ramp.
stairs.
They can have the
There's a
ramps.
side ramp.
Both sides have ramps,
Right, but you still have to go all the way to the back.
Still have to go into the back, right?
halfway.
So that's okay here?
No, there's-
You don't, the ramps are midway.
On the music room side.
They're
the ramp
midway.
is midway up the.
Okay.
And on the other side too.
So it's more of the stage being the egress, not the stairs to the stage. Okay, that was my.
So in measuring everything out, which, we generally don't do in the pre-schematic or pre-referendum phase, but we did it here because this is an interesting space that we have to deal with this lift that we're talking about in the corner here. We saw that, what we were proposing based on the original drawings that we had in our possession really wasn't working. So we talked about, moving these doors in so that you can get around to the lift or the elevator here. And we really couldn't do that because of where the floor slope starts. So on any side of a door, you need to have a minimum of a 5-foot flat floor. Okay, so if we push those doors in order to be able to do that, you'd end up with something like a 2-foot space of the flat floor. So it'd be towed by it. So FCD wouldn't accept that, you can't do it. So I don't love this. But this is what I believe you are stuck with because of the situation of your existing building. Is for somebody to use that lift, they would have to, so if they're coming in the auditorium lobby and they wanted to go up to the corridor, they have to enter the auditorium. They have to come through here, they have to get on the lift or the elevator, if we can change it to be an elevator, and then up, okay? It's, so the elevator or lift is within the auditorium, it is not within an expanded lobby. Okay,
And is that the reason that you have to create the egress, or you would have to do that anyway?
no, you'd have to do that anyway.
So 2 questions on that. One, couldn't you level off the other 3 feet where it's ramped and still do what you're saying? Even though the floor is going down, couldn't you level that off and make a platform?
Eating more seats.
Yes, but what that would require is demolishing the entire floor of the auditorium because we have to re-slope everything up to meet that thing.
And 2, how loud are these machines? Because you don't want someone having to use the bathroom in the middle of a play.
I know.
Said that.
I know. I don't like it. But all I can say is, we could build a screen wall here. And there will be sound attenuation and we will design it the best we can. But it is far from optimal.
Again, 3, why can't you just leave it alone?
Well, downstairs has nothing, so we can, and we could leave it alone, but there's, if you have people that are at the auditorium, that needs to use the bathroom, they have to walk up the
Yeah,
stairs.
so I believe from experience over many, many years that when we send plans to SED for all the other great work you want to do in this building, they're gonna say it's not accessible, you have to make that accessible. So that's the way SED enforces accessibility, right? So all public agencies were supposed to be completely accessible as of 1996, right? But nobody really is. So that's the way SED forces it.
Well, and an asteroid can come through the roof right now and hit me.
Yeah,
Well, why don't we let FED look at it, and if they flag it, then we can deal with it.
yes, okay, but I still think you want to ask the public for the money. Because otherwise, what do you do then?
Then we can redesign it and go back again.
Okay, all right.
You know, it's something-
You know, just,
okay.
you know,
But that's a good point, Alan, right? When we ask the public for the authorization, it's based on the proposed scope, and if we don't include that scope, we won't have the money to do that work. And SAD might say nothing else happens unless you. Projects.
How much is this, the estimated cost?
okay, sure. And just before I say that,
Okay.
and I'm not saying that's possible, I'm saying that's probable. From our
And
past
SED won't
experience.
see it until after that.
After the vote.
What's that?
SED won't see it till after we've already gone out and asked for the money.
Correct,
So
yes,
if you're saying it's probable that it's not gonna be able to move forward if
Yeah.
we don't essentially have a plan for it.
yes.
I've had energy projects where SED has made me do egress and stuff as part of the energy scope because the building wasn't up to code. And I'm like, this is an energy project that needs to meet the 18-year payback. This has nothing, egress has nothing to do with energy. How am I being held responsible for this? They're like, you need to upgrade that or we're not giving you a permit.
Yeah, they don't give you a building permit. That's the problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, you asked what?
The estimated cost.
Okay, so this is actually going to be less expensive. Now, but this was only, you know, we only met virtually last week. We talked about these things. We sent someone out to measure it. So Lou hasn't quite caught up with the estimate yet, but for this fraction of the total, this piece itself should be less expensive than the last estimate you have in your
But
hands.
not the egress piece, that's not included.
No, that will have to be added in, but we're still.
I did revise the documents that you have. I did put allowances in there for added scope that we talked about, and I did add an allowance for that, and I just clarified, I still need to understand more about how we're building it to make sure we have enough money, but I did put a
So
placeholder.
you put the sunken egress at 155,000?
That's project costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So initially, we had the renovated auditorium lobby at 418.
Yeah.
Did that have anything to do with
We
the,
don't,
I thought that they were gonna do a presentation and then I was gonna talk new numbers.
You know,
That's
that's why
why I
we're
joined.
going to interest of time if you want to hand that out. It's okay.
I mean, honestly, the board is more of money. Money guys.
thank you.
You got all your notes on the side of that one. What you're gonna see on the right-hand side, you're gonna see highlighted, it's gonna say added scope. And or it's gonna say discussion items. And this was based on our last committee meeting.
So I think the most important thing here, you know, obviously I understand the board's fiscal responsibility and how serious we take it and that, you know, the numbers are going to constantly evolve to some extent. But with the last few minutes of our time together, I wanted to give an opportunity to ask any questions to our landscape architect about the traffic portions of the projects. We haven't really touched on that yet. So if anybody wants to ask some pointed questions about that. And then I think with our last few minutes, we can talk about Lou's chart that he just shared shows the proposition bundles as previously discussed. And if there's any interest or desire to move things around, you know, prioritize things up to Prop 1 or down to Prop 3. I want to do some time for that. I'm going to have some questions on that too. So maybe we can just start with the traffic. Does anybody have, I know Howard, you had asked some questions. The last time we brought the gentleman in specifically to address those. If you want to ask anything specific.
Well, all right, Lou, I know you're a PE, so,
No, I'm an engineer, not a PE.
you're not a PE. Oh, okay.
I'm a power engineer.
Yeah,
So
okay, you're powering.
but I guess I'm sorry.
So you're not a licensed professional engineer who specializes in traffic operations?
No.
Okay. What type of, if any, traffic studies did the firm come up with? To come up with saying that you need a traffic circle would work here, which you might very well do. Or at Elm, have that road come in. Do you know, right, go ahead.
No, I did an estimate on what I didn't come up with the design.
So he's the construction.
That was
Okay.
Yeah, that was his guess,
Do
yeah.
you have a design?
Well, you've seen our design. So we are engineers, civil engineers, landscape architects, and mechanical and plumbing engineers. So we design such improvements to public school sites every day. We have a level of expertise in it.
But I haven't seen a blueprint, an elevational design, any drainage,
No, because that's engineering that comes later. So
how do you know what it costs? How can you put a price tag on something if you have no idea on drainage, excavation, how circumference, the traffic circle has to be for not only buses, but fire trucks and delivery vehicles? No, that's not the way the Department of Transportation designs. They design group designs long before it goes out for a bid.
Right, and it is designed long before it goes out for a bid, absolutely. But just like anything we do in a building, let it be a boiler replacement, a roofing replacement, a building addition that has stairs and elevators or lifts in it, it's the same thing. We've experienced in doing those things and lose experience in doing those things. So we understand the scale and the costs. No, none of that. The elevators, none of that is engineered at this point, because that requires a significant amount of time from a team of engineers.
But
So.
And I think the difference between what we're doing and like doing it in the private sector or even with government is you have a budget established that you say, okay, this is what I need to do, design it. If it doesn't fit in the budget, then you start trimming it down. We have a budget of 0 right now until the public says
Yes,
you can have it.
correct. The
And I
high
think-
school is a perfect point for scaling things down every time the bond issue failed. Your firm built a high school.
No, we didn't.
Well, who was involved? Which firm?
I built that.
So when the high school was built, was any traffic patterns looked at or thought of?
By the architects, yes. At that time.
And then they're the ones that thank for the current situation that you're now trying to straighten out.
Well, and this is my take on that whole transportation thing. There's nothing right now, and this is gonna come out wrong, but so be it. There's nothing right now that says the traffic doesn't work. Right? The buses get out, the kids get out, parents get out, they pick up their kids, same thing in Elm. Do we like it? You know, there's a couple people that are inconvenienced on Elm, usually at certain, specific times of day. But to me, that's one of the big areas in this project that we could say, then we just won't do it. I'm thinking personally, like you put all that in Proposition 3. If the taxpayers say, we cannot afford this, then we hopefully drop Proposition 3 and we live with the traffic the way it is today. We're not adding any buses, we're not adding any cars, we're not adding any students or teachers. Do I like that idea? Absolutely not. But
I will I will disagree, and I've said it in board meetings in the past, in previous years. The current traffic situation is a dangerous situation that this district is allowed to be maintained with a do not enter sign coming into traffic with traffic willingly known by the district to just nor the sign.
Yeah.
So the district leaves itself out to liability on it. And to do this properly, there should have been a traffic study done to, by a licensed professional engineer that specialized in traffic operations to figure out how best to fix this problem. And the same thing at Elm, but that's my opinion.
Can I just say one thing that I think outside of the high school, something that needs to be looked at possibly separately, and I think, Brian, you may have been part of this discussion previously for one of the like the standalone projects, is coming up that way in front by the library there, where when parents are dropping off and backed up, there is no lane to pass. And whether we do a traffic circle, whether we do whatever, that's a safety issue. And I think that that's something that needs to be looked at, maybe separate from, you know, if we're gonna put everything in prop 3, that's fine. But I think if there's a safety issue that we're aware of, we need to look at
Yeah,
it.
that can be done without the circle.
Right.
Yeah, and there are other aspects
Right.
that can be done now.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, can we, in preparation of our next discussion, break out the costs for just the safety issues that pertain to the traffic proposal, like the actual lane, just coming up Laser Avenue? It's that one lane. Can we do a unit cost of that as a?
I have everything broken out. I had the lane going around the back of the building, the widening
Mhm.
of the front. And then the circle was part of the middle school.
So would it be helpful to the board to see that breakdown of each piece of these infrastructure projects, what the actual, just the additional roadway now, like the additional lane at the high school? So if that's helpful, we can bring that forward, to the board. Okay. Are there any other questions on that piece?
No, and I think it's to be said too, that just if it's not an all or nothing thing. I mean, I think the traffic circle kind of helps all 3 schools. I'm not sold 100% on Alden or Elm, probably Elm more than Alden, because I don't think just switching, I think that main road coming in does need to be widened. But I'm not sure if just switching buses going around a parking lot versus the parents going around the parking lot really kind of,
Okay.
you know,
Maybe
I
the
mean.
a la carte breakdown would be a little helpful in identifying, because we may want to.
Maybe, I mean, you know, I don't want to get too granular. I'm just saying more to the board that, you know, we could say, yes, we still want a circle, but we don't agree with Elm or whatever it might be. It's not an all or nothing type of thing. That's all I'm saying. But I did have a question as far as the new versus the old. I know we removed the renovated gym, which I appreciate just to see it, which was the 2.7 million. I still want to discuss removing the new offices at the 1.2. But anyway, it went down from 67 million down to 59 million, and the gym was only 2.7. So I'm just curious if,
Well, what I also did was I took the EPC. Elliot asked me to take the
so you
EPC.
dropped the 6 million off.
Oh,
Okay,
Yeah.
understood.
I wanted to really show the actual impact to taxpayers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So, with Lou's chart in front of us, are there any thoughts to modifying the proposition bundles at this time? If anybody feel that something should be prioritized up or down, given the information we have after today?
We don't have those handy, do we?
Oh, well, it's here. It's the way that this is broken out.
Oh, it is, I'm sorry. It is broken down. Right.
And I think Lou's level of detail is helpful for,
Yeah.
you know, you may want to peel something out of things that unto itself.
But with proposition 1, 2, and 3, the stuff that's say in proposition 2. Does that take cost, but by putting it in proposition 2, does it cost extra? Like, you know, if we, let's say we didn't do it, but we had to do it later, forgetting, you know, all the materials and everything would go up. But is it adding expense to separate any of this into proposition 2 or proposition 3?
I don't think the bundling affects the cost. I think the delay would affect.
Right.
So but that's a really good point, Perry. So, you know, if cost is a factor and the numbers may creep as we dig deeper into the design, there may be a decision to just not include something in any of the 3 propositions. There may be things that are just deprioritized and delayed, and that's okay. Those costs will go up if we put it to a vote 2 years from now and we do the work 5 years from now. But I think to really inform our next conversation, I'd like to tighten up what are important things? So kind of, this is gonna sound weird, ignore the dollars for just a moment, if you can. And just look at the things that are most important to us in addressing for our students.
So I have a different question, but along the same lines. Are any of the items that are in Prop 2 for the BCF for the middle school, are any of those going to be problematic if Prop 2 doesn't go forward? Like fire alarm upgrades,
The roof.
well, I think the roof
The
isn't,
roof is a problem. and
yeah,
problem.
the roof is like.
Yeah.
That's
Would have been nice before the storms.
Oh.
I think we could come back and make recommendations. I think I wasn't at the meeting when you guys sort of said, I think it's back there, Prop 1, 2, and 3 sort of bundled. I wasn't at that meeting, so I think we can make recommendations. I mean,
Yeah.
life safety, you know, of course, you always want to try to
Yeah.
put anything life safety wise up ahead.
Well, and is there anything that the state would say, you can address this when you want to go do these other things? And then later can't be billed as an emergency either.
Right, so any of the Prop 2 or 3 things that would prevent a Prop 1 thing from being completed or having a building permit issued.
My concern was that in Prop 1, there's nothing included for the Millbrook High School, and my concern is that only Prop 1 passes and the others don't. There's some, to me, seemingly safety issues for Millbrook High School that should be moved up, such as the sidewalks, and I think there was the fire alarm upgrade that seemed really important to me. And to not leave a whole school out, for which I'm sure there could be some updates out from that Prop 1. And then my other question was, it says all the needs a new cafeteria, because right now they have a gym, cafeteria, multi-purpose room, but so does Elm. So why was that not part for, or being offered for Elm? Why is that such a need at Alden? Because they have the same situation.
Yeah, I don't actually know that it is, I mean, I don't want to say that it's not a need, but in creating a cafeteria space, we have the ability to renovate the Alden APR into a more purposefully used gym space. I think that's the piece of it. At this point, that is not part of the plan for Elm Drive, and therefore it will remain an all-purpose room.
Well, you wouldn't have the same options, but you don't have. Stuff too.
I don't actually think that that's
No?
true. I think we probably do have the space, in both buildings. I don't think we have conveniently located space, but we definitely have space. You know, like in Alden, there's those classrooms right there. Elm's whole setup, there's no classroom on the same level as the APR. So especially with the little, like I'm picturing a pre-K child trying to carry their tray up a hallway, even if it was the first 2 classrooms right there, that would be a disaster. So scheduling is still not easy, either building, because there's a chunk of the day that the APR can't be used. But I also know that we have other plans for accommodating Mr. Russell and the kids on days that they can't go outside. So we just had a long conversation about that actually yesterday and today.
So there could be alternatives if.
Yep, and there have been, right? At one point we used Village Hall sometimes. Yeah,
And this is kind of the disadvantage of not having a whole board part of the committee, which, you know, we can't. But I mean, if the board feels that we should take as a board a little bit of time and just go through each one, get everybody's opinion as far as if it's necessary or not. You know, we can figure out a time to do that.
I would like.
Not what you want to hear, Elliot, I'm sure, but I just want to make sure that everybody's opinion is heard, because as we go through here, we can go through here 100 different times. But if we as a group did what we did as a committee and just kind of go through and prioritize, you know, and say, do we need this? Do we need that?
I'd rather get it right, honestly, like, if we're talking about extremes, I'd rather delay the vote if it means getting this right. We're asking the public for something that we're all gonna do once in our careers. This is like once in a lifetime stuff, and I don't say that to be like hyperbole, like, that's legit. Because we're talking about building things that are gonna last 30, 40, 50 years. We hope that it's kept up with and we're not in the same situation, or whoever's here 50 years from now, not dealing with what we're dealing with now. But we're probably gonna touch this stuff once and hopefully not have to do this again, so.
Well, I think once we get the final numbers and the final breakouts of those few things we talked about in the beginning, and we get an updated sheet, and we as a board just meet for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna delay a vote.
Yeah, so we can, what we can do is, we can have a project team meeting in the interim, we can crunch it with our board member,
Yeah.
committee members, and really tighten it up in a place where we're comfortable bringing it back to a board workshop and then kind of beat it around. I think that there's still, design phases. So one of the things that we didn't touch on was like, and I know our folks from Trainer here and our engineers talking, we spent a lot of time at our last project team meeting, what kind of HVAC system are we gonna put in at Elm, at Alden, here at the middle school, right? So we have, and I'll give you the very brief 30-second snapshot is, we can put back the stuff we have with newer versions of the stuff we have, which may or may not meet all of our needs. We can go to the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, and Lauren can tell you all about the amazing state-of-the-art designs that are sustainable, green, and really expensive. Or we can shoot for something in the middle that's a better design than what we have, which will be more expensive than an in-kind replacement and may not be the Rolls-Royce option that, private industry would consider. But before we get to that conversation, we have to know from the board, how important is it to do the HVAC upgrades at Elm, Alden, and the middle school? Like, because I think we have to, at a very general way, just decide how important it is to do the work, and then I'll work with the team to quantify it.
I mean, personally, things are important, just air quality and everything else, but are we right now replacing in kind or the middle upgrades?
So
I know we're not at the,
we're not at
Blame it on.
the high end.
Yeah,
Because
I'm not
we
giving
just-
you the play.
yeah. If you let her, she'll tell you.
Yeah.
And she's really good. We're in the middle, and I'll
Okay.
say we're in the middle because, when Fred and the BBS team did our building condition survey, I'm pretty sure we priced it out as an in-kind replacement, because that's kind of what you do at that very fundamental stage in the process. One of the things, and I'll use Elm as the example, is Elm has moisture management concerns. Alden, to a similar but lesser extent, has had moisture management concerns. And so one of the things that we've asked our friends at Train and our engineers at BBS to partner on is, if does an in-kind replacement really address all of our concerns, including those, are there other systems that we can propose that are different? And that's why you'll see references to that DOAS, the dedicated outside air system. That was one of the types of systems that's an upgrade to what we have. It's also more expensive.
I would say the biggest thing, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you,
No,
is
you can
the
interrupt me.
boilers too. So if we're in the ABC looking at doing the boilers, that can drive, so you've seen boilers right now. You can't reuse the steam piping if we do a conversion to hot water, which steam, we haven't, you can ask me and Matt, we haven't seen in school buildings in a very long time. And if we do, they're ripping them out. So if we are doing that in APC, we have to build into the capital project, a system or a design that is hot water. That requires more work, right? Piping throughout the building, and deciding what systems to use to get you guys what you need. But at the same time, from an EPC and energy perspective, Matt can tell you all about how bad Elm is per square foot and all of that stuff. And you're bringing yourself into the next generation, right? From steam to hot water. So that's like a big thing with the different types.
And I think our project team meeting, venue is the appropriate one to bat around those design types. And then we can bring them to the board and say, well, we as a team are recommending this design because, and these are the ways, the things that got us here. Kind of like what we did today when Brian talked about the general architectural scope. Like, these are the things we looked at, and this is how we got here, and this is the recommendation. But before I can bring you that information to make an informed decision as a board, I kind of need to know how important is it to you and where does it fall in our prop 1, 2, or 3 in terms of like, is the board as a body saying that indoor air quality is our top priority and we want to see the HVAC upgraded at all 4 buildings and move that up to prop 1 and let's drill down what it would cost. And I think we can present it in full transparency with the in-kind replacement would be $2 million. A Del S system would be $4 million. The soup to nuts Cadillac system would be $7 million. So we're not recommending the 7, but we don't think the 2 is gonna meet our needs. We're gonna shoot for the 4, and this is why.
And I think it's important to say, I mean, just because you say it's important, it doesn't automatically put you in category 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's at what cost? Yes, it's important, but, you know, so I would agree it's important, but you know, I think we kind of need to do that with more than just the HVAC, but I know that's an important one.
Yeah,
I
and
agree
I think
with you.
with a lot of these things, we have to talk about the cost of not doing them,
Sure.
right? Like, look at the whole disaster we had at Elm Drive. Repeating something like that could be very close to those figures also, right? So we have to talk about that, and I don't just mean with the way that the buildings read, but I mean with a lot of the things that we've kicked around, you know, this evening. I mean, there is a cost associated with not, you know, properly dealing with the ADA compliance issues. One thing I do want to address is, because if there is anybody at home, there were conversations earlier that talked about, you know, safety and security in our elementary buildings. And I want to talk about this from a point of, our buildings are safe and secure because we've done the best we can with what we have in place. These would all be safety and security enhancements, right? That would really allow us to maximize the security of those buildings. But I don't want anyone hearing that out of context and thinking that we have these safety and security issues in our buildings either.
Can I just say one more thing, Elliot, too, with regards to the HVAC system? Because you mentioned, you know, the changing fragments. There's a lot of change in just New York State from, you know, fossil fuels to electric and improvements in decarb and all of that stuff that are starting to become mandates. Like you guys have the EV buses mandate. Like they're going to start addressing that stuff too. So putting you guys in a position to follow that, I think is something we should look at too.
Coming out of the pandemic as well, you know, having HVAC systems that are capable of bringing in, you know, clean, fresh air is very important. The systems that you have now at Elm and Alden are very limited in their ability to bring in a lot of fresh air. The way they were being, like, the way the state was advising you to bring in fresh air during COVID and filter air, is a challenge with the systems that you have. And I'm sure your staff dealt with that. And our 13 filters just aren't great, adaptable to a 60-year-old unit ventilator.
Yeah, highly restrictive, strain unloaded, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's as much pushback on the HVAC roof windows, like the main frame of the schools that need to be fixed, the boilers, as far as just more of the outskirting of it. So,
I just want to be, I think if we're gonna do it for one component of the project, we should show everything with the same level of detail and scalability, especially when it comes to cost.
Sure.
If we're gonna make decisions on, you know, this first and that. I will say that, one of the things that we will need to highlight is, and we'll drill it down on the project team side, is like Lauren was saying about the boilers, if you choose to not do, or if you choose one system design over another, it affects how the boiler gets upgraded. It affects whether or not we can put a steam boiler back, even if it's, you know, not recommended, but that's the option we have, or if we're doing a hot water conversion, and then it affects the infrastructure of the full building. So I think we'll spend a little time really showing the ripple effects of one decision and how it can affect an entire building system. And I think we can do that with the traffic patterns, we can do that with the HVAC design, and we can do that with the building footprint in terms of the ADA compliance. With, like, here's the non-negotiables that we're gonna have to spend, right? If we do ADA here, this building, the baseline cost is, I'll just say $3 million. So we're not really talking about a $4 million project, we're talking about 3.5 versus 0.8. Or, you know, like Joe said, it's a matter of a couple of $100,000 difference, and we'll give you those numbers. You know, an HVAC system, taking that unit ventilator that's sitting behind Dina and Jennifer and putting a newer version of that old technology right back in the wall everywhere in this building could cost us $1 million, and a full new system might cost us $4 million. But there could be additional savings on the boiler side, on the infrastructure side. So I think we owe it to you guys, if you want that level of detail, to be transparent about, you know, an HVAC upgrade at baseline in this building would cost $2 million, can go up to $4 million. And then we recommend one or the other be done. So I think we can put that level of detail together for you in a way that makes sense. And then perhaps after the next workshop, we'll find a time to schedule. I think let's get our project team meeting scheduled. I'll work with these folks directly following tonight to get something on the books. I don't want to schedule our workshop yet because I want to give them time to do this work and really bring you back some quality information. I'll work with our superintendent to determine when we can get that meeting scheduled, if it just seems to fall with the next board meeting, or if we can do it sooner, depending on when we have the information together. But I think at that point, maybe that'll help us inform how we want to prioritize the work with that additional information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other thing that I was thinking, something that Perry brought up before too, when we're going through these things, there are some items that if we don't address them now, when the ceiling's open, when we're running new piping, when we're doing these things, and we have to do them later, right? What's the cost associated with them going back into the same ceiling we were just in? So looking at it from that perspective too, right? Like, I know it sounds like a lot right now, but we're actually saving on this and this and this by doing it now and not having to redo something later.
The fire alarm is a perfect example of that. If we do the EPC and Lauren and Matt's team are gonna rip the ceilings down, it's a lot easier to run that fire alarm system through a naked ceiling system than to snake it through a drop ceiling grid through 150,000 square foot building, right? The
And
cost, I mean,
the light fixtures as well. So do you do a fixture that's a surface mount, eliminate drop ceilings to expose ductwork, that kind of stuff, or do you retrofit the existing fixture that's proper that could be interfered with later if you do an air handling system with those?
so we can highlight those things
Yeah.
at the next
I think it's
conversation.
important, right?
Right, like, if we put these things together, the say, and Lou, I don't know if there's an easy way to map out savings of bundling those things, or maybe it's just more conversational, because Lou's looking at it, like, yeah.
It is, it's
Um,
really hard.
But it's even just highlighting, right? If we have to go back and do this, right, there's gonna be the cost of opening the ceilings, which will already be accomplished because of the other things we need to do.
So even if you couldn't put a dollar amount on it, could you change the color of the font and say the green items will experience a cost savings if they're done together? And using that example, fire alarm, ceiling, grid lighting fixtures, right? Piping, depending on if we're going overhead or in the tunnel, right? So if we're putting a new hydronic 2-inch lines down the hallway, we open the ceiling up anyway, it's easier to hide them than to build sockets around them, right? These are things that we can at least speak to conversation. Okay, so, go ahead, you know.
In addition to that, along those terms, I had a question for Frank, because you had mentioned that was operating at $5 per square foot, and that was really high, and that like really stuck in my head, and saying that's comparable to hospitals. One, what are our other buildings comparable at per square foot? And then can you give us an idea of what the target should be? And if we do these things in these buildings, especially for Elm, what it could bring it down to? And I don't know if that would go along, Elliot, and adding that to what you're saying alongside of it, because I think we've all set it up here that we know we're gonna have to spend money to hopefully save some money in maintenance and operations.
So we're doing a study that's funded partially by NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Part of that process is some of what we've had done in the past was doing some benchmarking, comparing the buildings to other buildings. So for an elementary school in this area without air conditioning, it's about, they use about 50,000 BTUs per square foot. Right now, Elm uses 141,000 BTUs per square foot, about 3 times what an average elementary school uses without air conditioning. To put it into context, and for your own buildings, which we know can see improvement, the middle school uses 76,000 BTUs per square foot. So even if we just put a hot water system in Elm and ignored the lighting and other energy efficiency things, you're gonna save half of the energy just by going to hot water in all relative terms.
Yeah.
So the problem with it is they're small buildings, so they use a lot of energy for a small building. It's offensive compared to peer buildings, how much energy the building uses. But it's not a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a little building, but you have a lot of major infrastructure needs. So the paybacks are tough. That's why we need a capital project to help fund, getting the building right. But it's offensive how much energy Elm uses. 141,000 BTUs per square foot for an elementary building is crazy. That doesn't have air conditioning and a lab and everything, right? So when we look at the other buildings, the high school is air conditioned. The high school isn't super efficient, but it's air conditioned. That's running at 94,000 BTUs per square foot. So even your little Elm building with no AC is blowing the high school out of the water on a cost per square foot. Because it's just, you're literally, we have windows open and in the shoulder periods, and in the winter, it's overheated because of the steam and the control. And it's very uncomfortable. It's not a great learning environment because of comfort and because of efficiency. That's apparent in almost every old steam system that I've seen. It's not a great, comfortable environment.
So,
All of it is.
All of it is in the same boat, all of it is about 100,000 BTUs per square foot. So about double what it should be.
I mean, we're sort of circling it. We kind of had some of these same discussions at our last meeting. How do we make, and this is really to the board, how do we make progress? Because we could, I mean, you saw what we did with elevators, right? We spent 45 minutes talking about elevators. If we get down into the roots of this stuff and start talking about which brand freezer we're gonna get and, how many hams it can hang. It's they hang hams anyway. Might be a mistake. My house, we hang hams. But we need to find a way to work our way through it. I don't want to cut anybody off about whether or not we do this or we don't do this or what they're worried about. But I also don't want to be here 3 months from now saying, so what if we took, the elevators out of Prop 1 and moved to Prop 2, and then we all kind of go, well, let's see what those numbers look like. And then, we wait another 2 board meetings before we do it again. So how do we, and like I said, I'm asking for, how do we make progress on this? Do we need to have the facilities committee go back and hammer this with the vendors, or do we think that when it's kind of we've already done that several times. Now it's time to have the whole board do it at a board meeting. And then how do we group these things so that we're not going, I don't mind you doing one office larger, but do we do 2? The school drop off, is that in the cafeteria or did we separate it? Because we'll never get through this if we keep doing that.
Elliot, can I ask really quick too, when you guys review this, can you provide them our scopes for EPC? Because this just has us lumped as EPC, so I want them to see that it includes the boilers at Elm, the boilers. Just keep in mind, and I think Matt said it perfectly, some of the EPC items that we want to address, it depends on if you do some of the additional work in the capital, right? So if you guys aren't going to plan to replace the piping from steam to hot water, we can't do a conversion on that boiler to save.
But why isn't the board, under Halden in Prop 1, there's a new boiler? Why isn't that in the EPC?
So we were talking about that. So the Alden boiler, we do have the conversion carried, but originally that was kind of after we did our numbers, we added it after and said we can fit this in the EPC. So Lou hasn't updated the numbers to the piping.
Okay.
So originally he was carrying a new boiler to replace in kind steam for steam.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what I'll task the project team to work on is updating the EPC scope.
Yep.
Highlighting the contingent scope within the capital bond. So
Okay.
these things need to happen in the capital bond in order to optimize the EPC.
Yep.
So we can just say that kind of as a statement.
I think we need to almost take a step backwards on the board's review. What are we trying to accomplish here? Let's go through those things before we get to, we need to make sure the air quality is good. We need to make sure our buildings are accessible. We need to make sure that, you know, we've done whatever. And then, like, if those things that we're talking about doing these are the pieces of those, the major pieces of those, then I think it'd be easier, and again, this is just my thought, is it'd be easier for the board to understand, you know, when we're looking at renovated tech rooms. Why? What are we trying to do? Well, the program, you know, next generation of programs is going to be focused on tech, or, you know, the new greenhouse. Is that part of an actual curriculum here? Is it going to be, what's it look like? What do we intend to have happen? And then, you know, so you've got a curriculum thing, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, the EPC stuff. But something that can let us sort of link why we're trying to do this to the areas that we're focused on, and then to the specifics.
Well, I think to Elliot's point, once he gets those numbers, we can sit down as a board and go right through each one. And if we have a question, we can just say, okay, it says new greenhouse, you know, tell us about it. You know, maybe not go that deep into each one.
Yeah.
But like, I'm more curious of saying, okay, the new boiler is 388. However, if we wanted to go to the DOAS that I guess, it's an additional 800.
Right.
That's night and day. So I mean, what would be included of that 8 million if we said, okay, we do want them to have.
Right, so a more straight line version of that might be, we have a steam system, we have a dead boiler. We can replace the steam boiler with a steam boiler for $500,000.
No, then we're just spinning in circles. I understand that. Yeah.
But I mean, you know, to convert it to hot water might only cost another $150,000, but the whole rest of the system has to be upgraded.
But I'm just saying, if we did a full system upgrade, it was $8 million. Is that all on the taxpayer's shoulders? Or is that, how much of that
So we'll
can
break out
be?
how much of that can be.
That's an important number, right?
Sure, absolutely. And
So I think once we have all of those kind of numbers and we can kind of really visualize it, then we can make a decision if we think it's really worth to have the higher upgrade versus the in kind, or if we want to do it at all.
Well, and to be honest, I was gonna say that I think within the project team, we have a lot of expertise at that table.
Sure.
And certainly with the feedback from administration, I would say that we would get to a place where we'll recommend a design as the project. And if the board's not comfortable with that, you know, we may say then it's better to just not do it at this time. Right? I would personally, I would prefer to not do a partial upgrade. And just say, if you want to wait 2 years and go back to a vote and do other stuff first, let's not do it half.
No, and that's my point, because right now it's basically doing what you don't want to do in the budget.
Well, exactly, and I don't want to task the board with scope design, because that's, I think that's a high ask for this board, I don't want to do that. I think it's really just, do we address this issue now or later?
Well, the reason that it has to be kind of a board ask to a certain extent, if it's gonna fall on the taxpayer dollars, 388 versus 8 million is a pretty big difference.
And I understand that.
Right?
But is that,
But I understand, Rex.
is that,
But there's EPC built in.
But that's what we.
no,
It's apples and oranges, right? We're talking about.
Well, no, we were looking at Alden, we weren't touching the whole mechanical system of the
Right.
building. The whole direct outside air system discussion came in at Alden, because we were looking at that at Elm. So the question was, why not Alden? So now that's sort of saying, okay, now both of them.
And both systems are steam and really should be replaced because of all the energy and.
So we're gonna,
but both of those things should go into the EPC, right?
So the boiler replacement can fit in,
Yeah.
so because of the cash flow, the boilers themselves can be converted and replaced
Okay.
into a hot water. And what I think Elliot or Lou was saying was we can do stuff inside the boiler room, but it's a whole system, right? So if we replace the boilers to hot water, we can't use the steam piping that serves steam coils throughout the building. So we have to look at the whole systematic.
and to that point, if the board says, we don't want to do the whole system, then it really doesn't make sense to have Lauren included in the EPC to do. the
Right.
board.
I see Alden in the middle school for the direct air. I don't see Elm,
So Elm, you'll see Elm is broken out. I do say that in the.
but that is getting the,
That's
That was
piece,
right
yeah.
there. That one I budgeted for.
you budgeted in. Okay.
That one's at the
There
top
are
of the second
three
page.
major options, I think,
I got
for the
you.
board to consider, and we'll come back next time with those three. First is that, as Elliot mentioned, let's upgrade and replace the existing system in kind. So replace the unit vents, we'll fix the steam piping, replace the steam traps, redo the controls as part of the EPC. That's gonna cost X amount of dollars.
And how many more years will it last?
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, that's really taking what you have and fixing it, but not going to the extent of dedicated outdoor air, which is what we would do on a new building, but it's more expensive to do on an existing home. The second option is, let's convert your two steam buildings, Elm and Alden, over to hot water. We'll have them do the boilers, part of the energy performance contract, and we'll do the rest of it as part of the bond referendum. It's gonna cost why, not $1 million. Then the third option is, let's look at dedicated outdoor air, which basically means we can get rid of the unit ventilators. We're gonna put units up on the roof. We're gonna dump them. We're gonna provide the proper amount of outdoor air in each of the spaces. And I know something that drives Elliot crazy is that, you know, in a space like this, if you wanted to air condition it, you could see you have a unit ventilator that's bringing in hot, humid outdoor air at the same time that you have a ductless split that's trying to cool the space down. Is there a way that we can make that more effective and more efficient so that one unit is doing both of those things? So we can do some of that in steam hot water conversion, but we can do all of that as part of the DOAS. So those are the conversations we've been having on our end. So at the next meeting, we'll come back to the board with all three of those options. We'll show you the pricing for all three, the advantages and disadvantages of both, and then you can.
Okay.
Yeah, life expectancy of all of them, like if we fix the steam, fixing it,
So.
how many more years are we even getting out of it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. But so one thing to point out here is we're having a pretty easy conversation as a group because that unit ventilator is not running. If that thing's on high, that fan is loud and that's what the teachers deal with all the time. So as we look at those options, definitely keep in mind that unit
You guys didn't
ventilator
know that.
is
But
out.
But I mean, the biggest thing for us is, you know, if we did this option, it's going to eliminate the mold problems that we've had for the last 4 years. It's gonna eliminate the skating rink that's at the top of the ramp at Elm. It's, you know, I mean, this is what we're trying to figure out is, what do I do to actually get, you know, some of this stuff resolved? I mean, we could put new plexiglass in these things, a little Elmer's glue, and we have new windows. But it's not gonna fix anything inside of these buildings. And that's where, you know, so you've got the things that need to be fixed because they're specific problems. I mean, the amount of time and money and discussion we spent on air quality through COVID, and like, all that magically went away. It seems like we have viruses floating around in here. It's, you know, some of these things are disgusting. I have personal knowledge of a teacher that complains to me every time listening to her fan rattle. So what are we trying to fix? And then what is it, you know, what are our options? I think if we can get it to that, because that's also what we need to explain to the public. Because they're not gonna get, you know, but if Elm Drive, we're trying to reduce the energy consumption by 50%. That's something that everybody should be able to understand. And then how does each one of these things accomplish that?
So we have our homework and I'll let, I'll be in touch with Cheryl and Carolyn when we have an idea of when we can. Well. And when we have an idea of when we can present it back to the full board, and then certainly our facilities committee members, I know we don't have that part of the agenda yet, but I hope we have some committee members staying with us that would be part of that conversation at the project team level.
So we shouldn't have done this first. We should have done this. After we put those people
I don't want to assume anything. I'm hoping for a little consistency with our board membership. But yeah, we will continue to drill down. And I think, you know, to Carolyn's point earlier is what can be with EPC, what's in the bond, what's gonna save us if we do them together, what the life expectancy is, all of that's really valuable and rich information that we can forward for the next workshop.
All right, so anything else you guys want to throw out at them?
Talk about the elevators just one more time.
I want to get one of those high-speed elevators, like, you know, you go to the high rises in New York City.
Oh.
I went about a third of a second. Anything else you guys wanna? Okay,
Just thank you for all your.
Yeah, thank you
All right.
guys.
Thank you guys so
Thanks
much
for coming in.
I appreciate the feedback.
Nice to see you guys in person.
someday you'll have to explain this energy performance thing, because why it covers the boiler but not the pipes? Why can't it cover the
If you want,
asbestos?
if you want the simple answer, is basically what an EPC does is takes the energy you're spending. And over 18 years, we save money, we'll save the district money from the energy bucket.
Mhm.
And that money, because we're saving that money, funds the installation. So if we can't, if we could say, if you guys were worse, which.
Or a bigger building.
Or a bigger building, we could do more.
So if we go around and drill holes into our
Right.
Into
our
your
heater
roof.
pipes, then you guys will fix it.
Things fall apart.
So, yeah, it's a cash flow thing, so,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
No, I'm gonna.
Bye. Thank you.
Why don't we? You had a consent.
You too.
Pretty quick.
Enjoy the air conditioning wherever you're going. And the nice air quality.
Forget that. So, just so long. Just jinx. No, I haven't. I'm walking. And by the time I get back, my excuse will be melted. Okay. All right. Wait.
Committees.
Did we just get to like vote for David or did he?
Oh,
so-
that's
right.
I'm
We're-
gonna-
That's what happens.
He's
Don't
a-
miss this meeting.
I just had Cheryl go edit them all and
David's on like 9 committees.
Facilities.
Around this, I'm like.
So the facilities committee, we've got Chris, David, Jen. Is that, you guys good for that?
Yes.
Food services committee? Chris and Jen.
Can I ask you
I
about
was on.
that? Is,
Okay.
no, my son.
Panic.
Are we required to have a food service committee meeting?
No,
Because we did not. It's not
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
it's not a required committee.
Yeah.
Right, do we
mean-
need to keep that? Instead, could we have maybe quarterly reports within the board meeting?
I mean, what does everybody think? I mean, honestly, we haven't heard from them and,
It was set up,
yeah,
when there was a problem in shortfalls,
Mhm.
major shortfalls. But that deputy superintendent is no longer here and it can be,
Well, plus COVID took care
Open
of
or
most of
not.
the issues.
That's
so-
true.
So
COVID
they
took
could-
care of a lot of issues.
I wasn't sure where you were going. COVID took care
No,
of
no,
most
I'm
of
just
the
saying. we
people.
don't have extra fund. No, with the funding and the free lunches and everything else, so I mean, you know, we may not see issues
Yeah, we had-
really until the end of this year.
You could actually
Yeah.
keep it and actually meet
As
20.
Well, why don't we-
As necessary.
We can always pause it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that whole part of our business is gonna, you know, go through some changes, so. Why don't, if everybody's okay with it, why don't we just pause that committee for a while? Then we can put, Chris and Jen on something else,
That's what.
which is always works. All right, so, you okay with that?
Yeah, the easy one.
Yeah,
Fun
sure, I was violating.
All right, board goals.
No members on food service.
We'll rediscuss it.
You do have the appoint members of food services under,
Oh, yeah.
Cheryl. I mean, I think that the board goals probably needs to meet, like, we don't need to meet as much as we were. That's probably like every 6 months just to touch base on.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Policy committee, we're definitely leaving David on that.
He's good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Do you want another, I mean, how do you feel? I'm completely happy with David, of course, but.
if you,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
we
I mean,
can
how
have
do you
up to 3 people on a subcommittee.
Well, since we paused food. I'll
Oh, we
jump
have
over.
plans for you.
Oh, yeah. We have another 22 subcommittee.
I'd like to jump over on there.
All right, well, let's put Chris on there as well.
I think that's really an interesting committee to just look through the
Well,
policies.
since so much that's.
And it's almost up to date, which is a great time to get on
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
then,
because we're gonna open them all up again.
it. And you get some credit for it.
That's right. Then we've got the audit committee. I mean, that's probably one of the most exciting committees to be on. Are you good, John, Chris? Dutchess County School Board,
I haven't done anything with you on that, Perry, sorry.
no,
Is
Even-
she just like a
It's hard for me
backup?
to attend
the biggest thing was I went to dinner. I mean, no, it's honestly, it's. You can put that committee is like one of 2 ways. One is you just listen in, it's an hour and a half. Hour and a half every month, just listen to it. It's also a great place to go, hey, what are you guys doing? How, you know, it's more a networking thing than anything, in my opinion. So, I mean, you're welcome to stay, you're welcome to go when you can.
Have, probably won't be able to, I have a lot of commitments outside of here. So, if you felt you wanted someone else on with you, so you can maybe rotate meetings, like please take someone else, because I really can't commit to attending additional meetings.
Yeah, I mean, is anybody else interested in actually attending it? Cause it doesn't unless I mess up like it's always the first Thursday of the month, and if the first Thursday is like the first of the month, then I'll end up missing it because I'm just not paying attention, but. If someone, and you're all welcome to go, that's the thing is, anybody's welcome to attend it. So let's just leave it that way, and, you know, if I get in trouble and somebody says you can't come anymore, then you'll have to have me.
Makes
All right.
sense now.
Legislative, Howard and Dina.
I'm good with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. The NISBA annual voters.
I'm good with that.
Okay, Chris, you good as the alternate?
That's fine.
All right. Now, the PTO liaison. What do we want from, what do we want to know about the PTO? Because it's the same with the MEF is, like, we know what they do. We know, like, they give us money and they fund events and things. But is there something more we want from these committees? Like, are we, MEF was always one that I've like, why aren't we asking for more? And I think having that discussion versus, one is taste and things like that. I mean, anyway, I just think it would be, we can spend some time, and maybe that's like what you guys can do is, if you're still interested in doing PTO, and then you can start to think about like the relationship between the board and those committees. I think it would be much better. So you guys okay with those two? District Data Committee, are we doing this anymore? I mean, so this is actually, I thought this was one of the required ones now. No?
I don't believe so.
I mean, I don't think we've met, have we? Oh, you're
Not
not?
on this one.
I might have missed, I mean, I didn't get any notification,
We had one.
Did we?
but I never had it in my calendar, so I think I might have missed.
I mean, it's one of the things, at least personally, I've always wanted, like, when can we start getting data? When can we start telling whether things are working? We don't ever seem to get there. We spend a lot of time talking about where data is and how to cleanse it and all that. This is another one, I think, if we're gonna keep it, we need to, figure out what we want from it, from a board standpoint. So, I mean, I'll stay on that one. You guys, that'd be great. We'll let David decide. If he wants to, but I think we need to spend some time talking at some point about what it is we expect. Okay,
Yes, and so it is not a required committee, so we would just need a direction.
okay. The district leadership
That is a
team.
required committee.
Yeah,
That's a new committee, right?
No, so, I think it's a newly formed committee.
yeah. It's
That's how I meant. It's really what isn't involved, I guess.
Wait, the word
I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yes, so it is actually, the requirement is for shared decision making team, or committee, whatever you want to call it. So included on there are, features from each of the buildings. To be honest with you, I would think that this would be like a committee people would want to participate in, but they really haven't.
The only problem, it seems like, is, and I'm trying to remember which committee it was, but there were teachers and administrators in there. And the minute like board members were there, it was kind of like, everybody gets real quiet and, I mean, I think it would be great for us to do it. I just don't want to see us, if the district leadership team has made good progress.
And I would say to you that we have not had a board member on this committee, this year. And that as far as I've walked in.
Okay,
Until this year.
so,
I'm sorry,
I'm not
can you
hearing your
explain a
name.
little bit of what it entails? Yeah, so, it's a shared decision making body. So essentially, if we were going to prioritize anything, those conversations would go through there. So this year, it was sort of like a spin-off conversation of the progress we were making in the strategic plan, the upcoming conversations that were happening about the capital project, just to like bring awareness, hear from additional folks, who are in different stakeholder groups, hear from them what their priorities are, make sure that we're not totally missing anything. And then each building has a building leadership team that is sort of like similar, but just for the building. There was at one time money that was put aside in the budget for each BLT and also for the DLT. And there were conversations around how that money was going to be spent, and that was part of the shared decision process. I think some of those committees went defunct when the DLT went defunct, so we're working on bringing those back in each of the buildings as well. So it's really about like creating priorities within the buildings and then creating priorities within the district.
I mean, if someone wants to go on safety or wellness, I'll go on leadership. I'm just on the rest of the district committees.
I
So whenever-
go on wellness if you want. I was thinking about wellness.
Well, there you go. That's fine. I'll be on leadership and you can. Unless someone else wants to.
Then,
You can put Jen and Dina on wellness, right? There's only, then there'd be three.
Yeah.
Somebody else wants to come with safe. Oh,
Chris is on wellness. Yeah, I can go on, if Dina wants to go on wellness, I can go on safety.
I mean, I'm good on safety, but there's only two of us, so I mean, if someone else wanted
Yeah,
to get
another
out of the
person
safety.
can join.
No, I don't need any more.
Not trying to twist your arm.
Wait, that was in the.
all right, so we okay?
Yeah,
So what are we doing? You're gonna go on district leadership, Chris?
yeah. And then
You guys.
I'll come off of wellness.
You'll go on wellness.
Yes.
So wellness is going to be Jen and Dina.
And Jen didn't.
Chris and Dean. No, Chris and Dean.
And then Jen.
Jen-
Jen slipped
That's just
out of it
making it
all.
all happen.
Nice.
I'm on the,
He's on the district.
I'm on the appoint committee.
The
You go on
appoint,
that one.
appoint everybody.
And are you coming to safety?
She's hands tight.
I can. It's Chris and me, like,
Chris
if you need three, yeah.
Chris Cross.
We're more than happy.
Okay.
I think it's good experience. I think that you'll learn a lot about like the safety and security.
All right, then we got
I'm good with
the
that.
tech committee. I'm good with that.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
But again, I think that's one of those things that, like, we don't really need to know what level of Google they're on. We need to figure out like what's important to the board. Wellness is now Dina
Chris
and
and
Chris. All right, all right. Do you want to make up some committees or?
Well,
Alright.
good. Harry, we actually one time mentioned about like an environmental committee, but I was actually thinking, could that maybe fall under wellness? Somehow?
Wellness.
Like maybe a subcommittee or.
Well, isn't wellness one of those mandated, and what's it mandated for?
well, so there's a wellness committee. And that talks about like mental health and all that stuff. So there's actually different aspects of the wellness committee that we speak about. We talk about physical health, mental health, like social emotional well-being. And then we also talk about child nutrition. And then we have an advocacy group as well to try and forward all of the other subcommittees kind of thing. We're looking this year to combine the climate and culture committee, because I feel like it's a lot of the same people at both of those meetings and a lot of overlap. So we're gonna be doing all of that in one under wellness this year. And then the safety committee actually is another required committee of health and safety. So that talks about all of the stuff that John and his departments do, so like lead water testing and like that kind of stuff. So we have two agendas in one when we meet as a district.
So if we wanted to address environmental issues, and is it possible to get students on these committees?
So, sure,
I
but
don't
which
get all.
committee would we be looking?
Well, I was thinking environmental, like if the kids had ideas for,
Well,
environmental projects, small ones. If we set up an environmental committee, but it had students and teachers and administrators there.
so I am gonna say that, I think environmental issues are really important. What I would say is I would not want to add another committee. We do not get a lot of participation and it ends up being another calendar appointment for administrators. And very infrequently, for those of you who do attend these meetings, very infrequently is there anyone else there in a meeting with, aside from administrators. We do have the ability to have a student on our health and safety committee. Typically speaking, when we have had students in the past, it has been a student that is like a volunteer fire person or in training, like in the cadets program, or somebody who has like a vested interest in the conversation as well. We can certainly do anything you want, but just know that,
Either that or, there is don't they have a club for environmental issues? Maybe we once I don't know how often they meet, but let's say once a quarter. We sit down with them and say, so what are you thinking about? One of the major reasons to get the board involved is we need some money to, I don't know, go do whatever.
so I think we need to think about that too. So extracurriculars, like the extra classroom activities are supposed to be student governed, student fundraised. All of that stuff, that's actually the purpose of them, is so that they learn like budgeting and finance and stuff like that. So we just have to be careful of, putting funds towards particular clubs.
Right.
And also making those types of like decisions. They may not want to meet the board.
Okay. All right, never mind. We got wellness, Proposed capital project, when do you think you'll be able to do that? Elliot, I mean, we don't have another board meeting in July, do we? I don't think.
No,
So. August, early August, is that,
So when I walked our team out, I just said, I want to meet at least once, if not twice in the month of July. Hoping that we could come into that first board meeting in August and have another discussion and like to give them some time to get those numbers tighter.
okay,
So I just, with knowing where we are in the month, I don't know that it would make sense to call the group together before that.
all right,
because our next meeting is August 12th.
Right, so if we can meet twice in the next
Before
4
that.
weeks.
Okay.
We have a lot
15th.
more to talk about.
The 5th.
She'll be meeting by
Oh,
herself
right,
on
right.
Saturday.
That's a
Sorry,
long,
because I am on vacation that week. I don't know if I said any,
really?
yeah.
I mean, that's waiting another month before you get any more direction. Though. I mean, do you,
Is it,
why don't you just let us know once you have the numbers from them, and then if it's.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to
It
get
only
them
takes them a
together.
week and a half, maybe we can set up another quick meeting.
I want to get them together within the next 2 weeks. I'll send out some feeler dates tonight, and tomorrow morning. If we can get it together, like I said, there's still 2 weeks between that meeting and the board meeting, and we're comfortable to bring it forward, you know.
Can we do it in online working,
No, right, not anymore.
Not anymore.
not even the working session?
No. It's the same as a regular meeting, basically, just the public can, talk with you.
yes, SED still can be remote, which they thought would be just like. All right, well. If we have to do a special board meeting, figure it
As
out.
soon as I have, you know, enough of what was asked for to bring forward, I'll reach out.
Okay. All right, the next thing is the consent agenda, and just so you know, the consent agenda is both parts of that, so. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments on any of the top 175?
Yeah, I have two. Are we just talking about, are we approving these? You know, section F, then G, then H, or all?
No, that's why I say, everything with an asterisk is.
Okay, got it. So I have a question on G 29 and then a couple on H 14.
Bingo.
Yes, bingo.
Okay. What's the,
Let's start with G 29.
yeah, but it's.
Well,
Make sure that,
I'm gonna ask it and then,
okay.
my question is, can be asked in public, and then if we need to go to executive.
Mhm.
Let me know. What does the HIPAA privacy officer do?
The HIPAA privacy officer, I'm pretty sure,
G29.
is the person that ensures its compliance with HIPAA.
The district's
yeah.
compliance with, like
Yes.
everybody within the district.
Yes.
Okay, so can we move that to executive?
Sure. Is. Because it's a discussion of. Okay, all right. So, was that G29?
G29.
Okay,
Okay, H 14. Oh, let me make sure it didn't change.
14.
So the intervention associate,
Mhm.
okay,
I'm sorry, you're saying H.
H 14,
14. Got it.
okay. Oh. A couple minor things, and I just have.
Age 14.
Age 14.
You're asking to have that moved to executive.
Why a couple questions I don't think it needs to be moved to executive.
Well, if it's about a contract with us, right?
Yeah, or should it?
A consultant agreement.
So, yes, yeah.
We can't talk
about that consultant.
Okay, age 14 to executive session as well.
That's fine, that's it.
Okay, oh, that's it. I think. Anybody else? All in favor? Aye. Any against? All right. Where am I? BOCES spotlights there for your dancing entertainment. Are there any questions from the public?
No.
Okay. All right, what was I supposed to mention?
Trees on them.
Oh, yeah, there we go. So there's a couple of trees on Elm Drive that are sick. Well, dying. The village sent me some pictures of the trees, actually. They're sort of on our, they're within the villages right away from the center of the road, 25 feet out. So the village is gonna take them down. They just wanted us to know, since that right away is actually through our property as well, so they're gonna take them down. They did ask if there was any chance that we could contribute to the cutting of the trees down. I mean, I don't see how we can pay to have trees taken down in the village right away. But just in case anybody sees somebody cutting trees down on our school property. What else was there? The NISBA convention, if you want to go, probably need to get ready because it opens on the 8th. I think that was it. Yeah, anything, Chris?
No, I'm good.
All right, Caroline?
Yes, so, I wanted to first congratulate everyone again for the graduations and the moving up ceremonies. At the end of June, it was really exciting to, hear all of the exciting plans that our students, also the awards and recognitions that our students had in the month of June. It's all really exciting. I kind of wish that some of that stuff came earlier, so we had time to really celebrate it before they're then out the door, especially our graduates, but super exciting for them. This summer has already been very busy for our administrative team. We've had a consultant working with us on look-fors for the Eureka math curriculum, so that when we are in and out of classrooms and observing teachers, we know all the shifts in terms of the next gen standards, and then also all of the program components for Eureka, so that we are fully ready to be supportive in our conversations with teachers. We also just finished 2 days of training on collaborative and proactive solutions. It's a collaborative problem solving model from Dr. Ross Green. So he talks a lot about how our students who exhibit concerning behaviors oftentimes have lagging skills and or unsolved problems that present themselves as essentially unmet expectations or expectations that students are having difficulty meeting, and then therefore at those times exhibit behaviors. And it's a lot of what we can do in the school buildings to support those students and help to solve those problems, rather than just, reteaching different behaviors that are more acceptable, but really solve the problems that are causing the behaviors in the first place. Tomorrow we have a full district data review. So each of the administrators will be bringing their lens of data for the entire team to review and talk about. So there will be data from, Alex and PPS, and she'll be talking about students with disabilities globally, not about any individual student. And then Samantha will be talking about all sorts of different things, from social emotional learning to student success factors to attendance type things. And then each of the building principals will be talking specifically about some discipline information and then all other aspects of data in their particular buildings, and then having those conversations about how are you using it throughout the school year, and really focusing on how can we use it most beneficially to make decisions. So we'll be doing some of that work tomorrow. Additionally, we have the prepare crisis training that will be coming in the middle of July. We have a trainer from Northern Westchester BOCES who will be coming to teach the administrative team, but then also some of our PPS staff about the prepare crisis management model. We have done some work as an administrative team in updating the district-wide safety plan. This year, the first year that we're required to have a pandemic plan for continuity of instruction. So in the past, obviously, we had to create a lot of those plans on the fly. So now it is one of the required plans that we have to put in the district-wide plan. The district-wide plan will be posted on our website to be compliant with the requirements for 30 days starting July 24th, so that at the second meeting in August, we can approve it. I'll bring a draft of it to be viewed at the first meeting in August. It will be available on the website as well, but then you'll have an opportunity to look at what you'll be approving in the second meeting. We also met as an administrative group and went over the district code of conduct. It's always important to review things. You know, just a couple of years ago, there was no such thing as electronic cigarettes. So we didn't have them in our code of conduct, and then they became a problem, and then we had to make sure to update the code of conduct to include those. So things like that, and also just sort of the pieces of the code of conduct that don't necessarily work within the aspects of the school building and the discipline process. So does it make sense that the disposition for something like this can only be doled out? Like, I think we found something, it was like a suspension from one contest, like game, or from like a club meeting, could only be done by the activity director or principal. So the coach wasn't able to sit a student out from a game without consulting, Al and Rick, right? And I feel like there's certain things with athletics, especially being a privilege and not a right, that the coach, if it is, detrimental to the morale of the team, should absolutely be able to sit a kid out, right? So we just had conversations around those things, and really those things come up and then they become conversation starters. So at the end of the year, every year, we do that with the code of conduct and the district-wide safety plan. And the code of conduct additionally will also be posted for 30 days for public comment before we then approve it. Our summer scholars program is off to a great start. It's being held in the high school again this year. All the little ones are so cute. They come in very excited for their school camp, as some of them call it. And we also have our extended school year for the first time. Typically speaking, we only have related services. So things like counseling services, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We have that over the summer typically, but this is the first time we actually have students with a mandated extended school year program that are attending here at Millbrook. So we're really excited about it, and things are going well with that as well. I do have here a proposal for a NYSBA resolution. As you've probably heard me mention multiple times, there's difficulty with not just the financial responsibility of preschool, but finding any of the providers, evaluators, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some proposals on the books to move the responsibility, the financial responsibility to school districts. Typically now it's funded by the county. And so one of, I think, the sticking points is that there hasn't really been a study done about what the need, right? And the last time the costs were evaluated or assessed. And so the funding amounts associated with pre-K, right, preschool services right now are really outdated. So at this point in time, I know Perry, we had a conversation and he had asked me to sort of review like, what are the options and what is my recommendation? My recommendation at this point is to ask NYSBA to oppose shifting the financial burden onto the school districts. As I told you before, we do have the burden of providing the services if they're not provided by the county, but we at this point are not being reimbursed. And I think that the districts in the region are suggesting that there be a comprehensive review of the process before anything's put on school districts.
But there's been like 2 or 3 different, they all say the same thing. Basically, no, the county should pay for it. But I'm curious whether if we submitted one that said it, but it was worded slightly different, does that lose, you know, its effect on NISBA and or the county? You know, like, well, Milburn said this, but Wappinger said that. It's the same thing, but does it lose it? Or, I mean, should we just be copying someone's and saying, yes?
Yeah,
for
so I
us too?
actually, I have this, and then I have the information from the other districts, what they've done as well.
Okay,
So I can pass this, this is how it would essentially read. Asking that they not move this responsibility until there's a comprehensive study undertaken to guarantee adequate funding, because as I said, the funding structure for preschool services hasn't been adjusted in quite a long time.
yeah, I mean, personally, yeah, yes, but I just wanted to make sure that if anybody is submitting slightly different versions, that we don't lose, you know, oh, suddenly our vote doesn't count.
Yeah, and I think that's why the guidance was sort of sent out. The education stimulus funding monitoring through the state education department, we received feedback for corrective action. So just to put this in some context, when the pandemic started, money started coming in. I think the first one was the CARES Act. So money started coming in with zero direction. At that point in time, basically it was like, so this money's coming, this money's coming, this money's coming. Typically speaking, you get an allocation. You can plan for the allocation before you can actually encumber the money. You have to send a plan in. And then that plan gets approved. That's how you spend the money. And then you send proof of how you spent the money. Starting at the beginning of the pandemic, I think there was a lot of like panic funding, without a lot of guidance. And so at that point in time, there were records kept, by the previous administration. But now, this many years later, and however many funds later, they've decided how they specifically wanted us to have accounted for that money and records they wanted us to keep. So, it's, we have a lot of it, right? But we don't necessarily have it in the exact way that they would have wanted it. So there's a corrective action plan, that we will have to respond to, so we will do that. The good thing is that our annual grants, which are very routine, when they've been audited, we've done very well because we know the expectations. So at this point, it's going back, providing them what we have and saying, sorry, we don't have that. We didn't know we were supposed to do that. And moving forward, we'll be glad to do it in that manner, you know? And then we have actually engaged Olveus trainers to start the process for training and implementation on the character education and anti-bullying training that was going to be funded by MEF, and we graciously withdrew that request because there were other program proposals that we wanted to prioritize, and we utilized other money that Samantha wrote a competitive grant for. So we're just waiting for that money to come in so we can actually start that. So that's going to be partially funded by the Office of Mental Health and partially funded by local money.
So does anybody have a problem with me signing this and sending it in?
I mean, I filled it out for you already. How did you fill that for? Sorry, Kurt.
Oh, nicely signed.
Serve it till I come.
Wow, no wonder.
I didn't find it.
Getting all these strange bills on the credit.
And that's what I have for you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Didn't I also hear that it was going back now to the county about the lunch funding?
I didn't hear that. I did hear that there's a reduction in the way that funds are being, you know, spent on school lunch funding. We just got that information the other day. I don't recall off the top of my head what the reduction, how much the reduction was, but it was fairly significant, but I did not hear that part of it.
What the hell is that? Okay. Elliot?
Not me, the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Other one.
Okay. And I will happily be the other one. So, it's been a fast and furious summer so far. We have crammed every ounce of every day, had something planned for ourselves and our administrators. So, it's exciting to see all the work that's unfolding. The website, as we've been discussing, is progressing behind the scenes. So Mr. Eads is taking the lead on continuing to migrate the information. So the Blackboard site, as I've mentioned, is sunsetting. So there was no option to maintain or keep Blackboard. So the option was to go with Final Site, who the company that purchased them, acquired them. So Mr. Eads is now in the process that migration, that's the copying version of our website, is taking place, is trying to make it more purposeful and useful. And once that is to that point, we're going through to make sure that, 22, 23 documents have been removed and, the updated versions of those documents are available. And then also looking at the user friendliness of it. So that's still in the works. Currently, as you do know, we are moving away from School Tool into our new student information system. So Synergy is that system that's continuing. There have been numerous meetings on this. Currently, we're in the go dark period. So we're not putting any new information into School Tool because it won't roll over. That's already taken place. So they are doing their end at Synergy, so that on the 19th of this month, that our team, counselors, administrators will check in again on that information. They've been doing spot checks along the way to see what the information, how it's looking. I'm working with Mr. Kirsch on developing personalized how-to videos for our community members. When this Synergy offers similar to a parent portal, but instead of having to go on their computer, it has a web application so parents can do numerous things versus such as reporting an absence and communicating with teachers. So he is developing a timeline for me on that and some shells of emails that we can look at to make sure that we know the audience that they're going to and that it's clear to them, in addition to developing tutorials for parents to watch or just in time help, and also timelines for when it makes the most sense to offer kiosks for parents to come in over the summer and once the school year starts to answer any questions and go through that system with them. So we're on target with that. Also, just because it had such a popular response from our staff, I've continued to reach out to area food trucks for our superintendent's conference days, just to offer our staff not to have to go off campus, having different varieties of food that they wouldn't normally have access to during the regular school day. So we have several different vendors that will be coming in throughout the year to support our staff, which hopefully will be a fun addition continuing for them. Our registration program during this go dark phase, just in addition, there's information on the website, just reminding people what forms have to have what we call wet ink. They have to be printed out and actually have a signature. You can't fill them out electronically, so that's all listed on the website. Pre-K, obviously registration is still open. We're up to 24 now. So that's really exciting. And there's, that we have a form that's there. So during this go dark where parents can't be filling out forms electronically, they can put in their contact information. So as soon as the system's up, Ms. Madison can register and check individuals to make sure we don't lose contact with anyone. So we're very excited about that. Caroline mentioned the summer scholars. They are the cutest thing. And the excitement of seeing the students come into school it's just fun to go over there and see everybody, and the staff is having a great time. So I did wanted to shout out to the facilities department, because how you transform a high school into an elementary world is impressive, and all those little desks. So we do appreciate the extra time for your team making this space, clearing it. All of the high school desks are in the cafeteria right now, so that our little ones' desks can be in the classroom. So that first floor is completely transformed. So I just kudos to you guys for doing that. Another kudos goes down to our teachers who have completed summer mini grants, which we're really fortunate to fund through our title grants, and that we had 18 grants submitted in a variety of topics that are from literacy, math, science, social emotional learning, culinary, world language, graphic arts, and multiple teachers doing different ones, different subject areas. So even though it's 28 teachers, they might be on repeated ones. So they're doing multiple ones. We're really excited. The teachers are utilizing this time over the summer to continue to refine their craft. And several of them are also working with 2 of the consultants that will be with us in the summer during that time. So just offering that additional support to them. So you see the numbers for summer scholars, so that's there. I had mentioned this previously, but the report cards pre-K through 5 are now in the hands of Synergy officially. So they're doing some testing to make sure as you enter information into the gradebook, it's flowing into the report card like it should. I'm working on translating the report card so that it will be available in Spanish. As Carolyn also mentioned, the title grant cycle is open again. So we have sent out the letters to our out of district schools and that have students from Millbrook attending those schools in addition to in-district schools, just to confirm that they still have students attending, and therefore, if they're requesting any funds, they're entitled to. We talked a little bit about working with the principals. So we are going to identify within the funds that we have within the title grants, what things they weren't able to fund within the budget itself that we can utilize or look to for grants. If the title grants aren't a fit, I am going to be attending a Grants for Schools conference at the end of the month. So I'm hoping to find additional funding streams for the types of programs that we want to see continue here. Trying to fit the puzzle together, because I've shared with you the different consultants that are going to be coming, making sure that there's a balance of when they're coming so that it's not information overload for our teachers, and recognizing what the ability is with subs. I'm finalizing the MEF grant for the literacy. There's 2 different ones with literacy. I was just trying to figure out which form I was using. So now that I have that information, I'm going to be submitting that. And next week, believe it or not, is our retreat. So we have been doing a lot of work preparing our administrators for the time that we're going to have together without distractions. And I'm really excited. It's a two packed-filled days worth of information. So it is including our strategic plan and our goal setting, and looking at our data again through additional lenses once we see what's going to be presented tomorrow, like the next level of that work. And then following up on a leadership mindset with Equity, which is also their innovative designs for education. So they are working with us, particularly with our administrators and our 6 through 12 teachers this year, on professional learning experiences, which are just in time online trainings that they have available to them. So it's been busy, but it's been really exciting. So thank you.
Thank
Questions?
you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy.
Oh, wait, I did have one question. What- For pre-K, what number do we have to get up to add a teacher, and like what's?
Like,
Yeah. So,
30th?
way back when, the board had made the decision to cap our pre-K program at 15.
Okay.
The state capped it at 18.
Okay.
So we would have to make a decision, probably have another conversation if we land at like 31 or 32.
Okay.
Do we, really want to open another classroom, or do we want to do something else in terms of additional support? But we're not mandated to do anything until we reach 18.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. This is the part I enjoy. I get to torture you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maintenance reserve work update, high school air conditioning chiller system, chiller number 1 has been repaired and it's operational. And chiller number 2 parts are expected in July. We received 130 donated portable air purifiers from Dutchess County Department of Health. They were obtained through a New York State grant, and I was able to get them from Dutchess County, and then distributed to all the teachers to have at the right time when we had the great fires in Canada, and those the teachers, school felt like gravy, so it was great, really good. Painted all the crosswalks, curves, traffic lines, speed bumps district-wide, and we also painted that large main entrance gate at the middle school and high school, it's like safety issues, that gate was kind of wanted to be seen, like, in dark and misty weather, so now you can really see it bright yellow, so. We commenced installation of new permitting and magnet panels, and interactive flat panel displays, smart board and plate, ordered by the technology department, you can see one right there. So what we're doing, we're taking these down, putting these up and repurposing, so teachers that have one that doesn't work too well, we take one down that's good, and we swap them out, so that's, this building's actually done right now, so. We have New York State School Facility Association Staff Enrichment Day. That was on Tuesday, June 27th. 11 of our facility staff attended the Mid-Hudson New York State School Facility Regional Staff Enrichment Day. There were a number of training sessions were offered to custodial maintenance staff. This was really good. It had a bunch of different classes, and facility staff was really great on volunteering to go over there. It was like a whole day thing, and it was really good. So look forward to keep doing this, and I'm really I just want to thank the guys for taking part in all that. There's a bunch of different places they know your lives. It's really great. The high school painted the railing and retaining wall in the auditorium, preparation of graduation. And the plan was to have like 4 days with the principal and the guidance counselors, to have the kids put their handprints on that wall and say that's in 2023. I don't know if there's a wall out there. Yeah. The kids was leaving with on the little rock right back out there, and this would be really visible for everybody to see. So going forward, Mr. Flags can have the kids with get the guidance counselor, and then we doing something out on that wall out there. And it also protects the wall, also was formed, starting to fall apart. So they use concrete paint and it'll preserve the wall.
So you get them to pay for free, is what you're saying?
No, we painted it. We don't have the kids go out.
One, I know this is like really stupid, but it's been, I know it was last year and this year, I think it might have been the year before as well. When the wind blows on that microphone, it sounds just like thunder. And because you see all those people go. If there's gotta be like a guard or something, you guys can put on there. I mean, it's like, the tiniest thing, and it's 9 months till we need it, but if we can get something on there, because it is a weird.
Yeah, there was
sound.
discussion about wanting to keep some of the mics hot for the ambient crowd noise, for that immersive feeling for folks at home. So we have to balance that with the interference and the distraction. And we talked about some other mic options for that.
Okay.
Painted rooms 214, 215, 216, 217 in the high school so far. We're gonna get that whole second floor painted every room that we may need it, so that'll be all done. We ran an electric line, the light pole out here in the parking lot, depending camera installation, so my part is pretty much done. I ran the electric up the pole, so we had the camera up high. So that's all ready to go. Once the cameras come in, measure something out, we're good to go. At the middle school, vape sensor installation is now complete, 100%. They're all up and running online. So
Great job. That's good.
I was working with technology, so shout out to technology, they're actually working.
And everybody in the administration's been trained that now these things are gonna go off, well, hopefully not, but if they go off, who does what to who?
We've already inadvertently tested that.
Good.
So, but all kidding aside, in an effort to provide deep cleaning to some of these bathrooms, we created a fume issue, which triggered the vape sensors, so we actually know how.
That's a good cover, Ally, a good cover. It must have been a cleaner, man. It's not here.
What actually did happen is it was a very slight trigger, and we were able to see the threshold limit on the devices, the notifications, the principal got it. So, like I said, wasn't an intentional test, but it was a great trial run on a lovely Saturday afternoon to see how they work and how fast they notify.
Cool.
Good job, Spicoli.
Yeah.
Listen to me, man, I swear.
Dave's not here.
And
Sorry.
then the last thing is at Alden, we did the same thing out here in the middle school with one of the election of the polls with 2 cameras to be installed, so.
And I don't know if I ever, I know I busted your shot with that, but I don't know if I've ever said it here. Congratulations on passing that test.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
That's big time.
Yeah, it's not my study for, I haven't done anything.
I have one, John, do they do that staff enrichment day? Like, this is the first I've ever heard of it. I don't, like, did they never do it before, or did we just never
No, I think our guys have gone. I don't think anybody, sort of.
ever
quit,
told?
but I think
That's
it's
great.
been there.
No, I like fun to have these guys go every year, I mean, it's a day out, and, they get to learn a lot, there's different classes, they can pick and choose. And, like custodial workers, they go for the custodial parts of it, and the maintenance guys go for the maintenance part of it.
Yeah,
I mean, the custodians can also go to learn knowledge about blocks and things or whatever like that, so it's really good.
that's
I think we
great.
had like 2 guys that, me and one of the guys, and then the whole district, while everybody was out.
No, that's great. Thanks for letting us know, because I had no idea that that even existed, so that's awesome.
Right, I think we know one of that, so.
Very good. So we're gonna go to executive session. I think there's something about, we're having trouble with tomatoes.
Tomatoes?
But before we do, Cheryl makes the font bigger and it's brighter green every time to make sure I don't forget. Before, just to let everybody know, when we go to executive session, the meeting is not over. When we come back, that we may have to take action on stuff that's been discussed during executive session. Also, just a reminder, everything in executive session is strictly confidential and must remain that way. So do I have a motion to go to executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay.